Walsh. So we're talking about the rise of the 49ers. It's on AMC right now. I didn't actually have AMC in my cable or my Hulu Live, but what I did is I went to the AMC Plus channel, and I just got a free week, and then I canceled right after I was done, so I didn't have to pay. The service is actually pretty slick. They just don't have a lot of stuff that I'm interested in. But so it's a 4-episode series. Takes you all the way from when Bill Walsh becomes the head coach. It goes back to Eddie D and Eddie D making some bad hires in his early days before he finally gets to Walsh. And it follows all of the Walsh years. And then when Walsh steps away is kind of when it's over. They spend some of the last episode on the Seifert Super Bowl, the first Seifert Super Bowl, and then the last Super Bowl that they finally won. So a little bit about that, but it's really about the first 3 Super Bowls in the Walsh years. And that, we read that book. We both read the Steve Young in Montana book. And I was like, man, when I was rereading that book on both of those guys, I was, the thing that I came away with was Bill Walsh was so cutthroat compared to his calm demeanor as it was kind of portrayed, or as I saw it as I was a kid. But he was really cutthroat. Belichick. People talk about Belichick getting rid of players a year early before rather than a year late, and like that was a Walsh thing back in like the mid '80s. They were saying that every year Walsh would have a one-on-one, like an exit interview with every single player, and basically tell them what he thought about them. And in some cases, he was telling people, I think you should retire. Can you imagine that? Like, you just helped this team. It's blood, sweat, and tears, brotherhood, everything, getting through all these hoops. And then Bill's like, I got to tell you, I think this game is going to, get past you a little bit here. So you may want to think about other options. Like, man, that's a tough thing. And I think even Joe said it best. He's like, I really have a friendship with him because it's actually a disadvantage for him to get close to us because he also has to make decisions about us as players. I thought that was fascinating. But yeah, what did you think about the kind of those early, Walsh genius years? Like that stuff is like, man, I mean, I'm just a little kid at that point, but that stuff is so memorable.
Yeah. I mean, for somebody who was in the weeds like I was with those teams, you could have easily done 4 more episodes because there were so like you referenced the book with Joe and Steve, and I can see even in the conversations that I have on social media that so many people don't truly have an understanding of what that dynamic was. And, I hear people painting Steve as this team guy and just go along. And he painting himself as a guy that I'll do anything to I just want to be if I'm gonna be the backup, I'll be the best backup I can be. That's horsebucky. That dude was campaigning, and there were Steve guys and there were Joe guys, and that was anything but a kumbaya situation. And Bill Walsh absolutely was stirring the pot for all of it. And for anybody to say, well, he did it to get the best out of both of them, that's horseshit. That's somebody trying to they're retroactively trying to make it all make sense. But that easily could have imploded that whole thing when you're trying to tell me that you're going to replace the guy who has won 2 Super Bowls and then went on to win 2 more. That it's just crazy that I didn't I was in it and didn't, we didn't live in a social media era. We lived in a newspaper and talk radio era and just didn't have, and as much as I tried, because trust me, I couldn't listen to KSFO and KMBR 24 hours a day. I actually had to sleep and go to school.
I would go to bed with KMBR on,
yes.
And I would wake up as my alarm with KMBR back on, listening to
and it was
Frank and Mike in the morning talk to Nelly.
And for me, it was so I was kind of a KSFO guy, so seeing
Uh-huh.
Ron Barr was my guy. He's the guy that I would go to sleep listening to, because he worked his shift was evenings on KSFO, so that was my bedtime was like 10 o'clock. So I was listening to him as I drifted off to sleep. So yeah, um, but even I knew based on the reports from Ratto and Lowell Cone that it was not as hunky dory and peachy keen as we're trying to make it out to be now. And then also the relationship, they did not, in my opinion, do a very good job of. You could have did a whole episode on, and I guess the fact that Bill Walsh isn't alive kind of made
Yeah.
that not, as possible as it could have been. But the whole thing between Eddie D and Bill Walsh
Oh, yeah.
and Carmen Policy being the mediator,
Yeah.
although Carmen mentioned they both had different numbers, but Carmen was like he fired him 12 times,
Yeah.
and Eddie said he fired him like he talked famously about the time he fired him on the flight back from New Orleans once, and Carmen somehow smoothed it over. But that relationship could have been a whole episode. There's
So
so
that's the thing that I was about to say when you were talking about the Joe versus Steve thing is how much of Joe versus Steve was Bill being so pressured by Eddie D to essentially win a Super Bowl every year. Like that's what Eddie D wanted. It was like, we have the talent, I pay the money, we should win this thing every year. And so when you can go toe to toe with Bill and say, you're the smartest guy about this stuff, so why aren't we winning? And then Bill could give you any sort of excuse or reason. We're a little old here, or whatever. We're worried about Joe, and so you bring in Steve. Like that move to me was Bill Walsh going like, okay, if I have to like hang my career on Joe Montana's health, then if he's hurt, I'm done because we have no other option. So to me, that's what bringing Steve in was like, this is a little bit of insurance for me because Joe continually gets hurt. And if you go back to that 86 game against the Giants, where is it LT who just Leonard Marshall or somebody just crushes Joe, and he just looks like the frailest human being in the world at quarterback at that moment, because he gets hurt in 87 right after that. Like you could
Jim
you
Burt was the hit.
in 86.
Hmm.
So then in 87, game one, he makes a throw across his body, hurts his back, and then he's out for like half of the year. So if you're Bill, you're like, yeah, like that makes sense for us. And also for me as insurance, because if Joe isn't the same, then I'm going down with that ship. And so that I'm sure that's a lot of what it was. I've told this story before when we talked about Joe and Steve, but I'll tell it again because we have some new people listening and some new people in the chat. So I was I was little. I was a youngster. And my buddy was Mormon, and I literally did not know anything about the religion
Hmm.
or whatever. But he had just invited me. He's like, "Hey, Steve Young is speaking at my church." I was like, "Oh, cool. I want to, I'll go to see Steve Young speak." And so, I remember asking my parents, and they're like, "Okay, like, cool. Like, are you sure this was?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, it's Steve Young." So I go, and Steve basically tells the story of first year on the Niners. It's Thanksgiving, and Joe invites him to Thanksgiving dinner because Steve is new, no family, single man. And I like when you run it back, when you Monday morning quarterback it, you're like, oh, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer. Got it. And so they're at Thanksgiving dinner, and Joe's daughter He's like, "Hey, this is Steve Young." And Joe's daughter goes, "Daddy, is that the man that you hate?" Kids say the darndest things, right?
Awkward.
And so, like you, I'm watching Joe and Steve. Though Joe in that documentary, he kept saying, "I knew I was better. I knew I was better.
Mhm,
There's no way that he was better than me." Joe continued to say that. And Steve was a little bit more diplomatic, but he was honest in that if I'm competing, I'm competing. Like, I can't really care about his feelings on the situation. I'm competing. I'm getting this opportunity, and it's my job to go out there and show that I'm the number one. But that was if anybody thinks this Warriors stuff right now is like crazed media, it's like not even close. Like not even 1/10 of what Joe versus Steve was in the late '80s.
mhm,
It was the biggest story in the Bay Area, sometimes in
mhm.
in all of sports in sports world. So um the last thing I want to say about the rise of the 49ers, those guys, as they get older, Ronnie Lott, Brent Jones, Roger, who was not in it for whatever reason, Tom Rathman, Keena, Jerry, John Taylor, Joe and Steve. I think even Guy McIntyre was in there. As we get further away from the last Super Bowl, I get really worried, like, just thinking like, oh man, those class of the NFL years are further away now than anything. Like we grew up in them, and then you and I are thinking like, oh man, even if we only win a Super Bowl once every 5 years, we're good. But now it's been 20. Let me think about this. No, 30. Is it
Mhm,
31 years since
mhm.
the last Super Bowl?
Yep.
And it is so far in our rear view that it's almost not it almost doesn't feel like the same franchise anymore. And with the way that history works and social media and people can barely remember what happened in today's Super Bowl, I just wonder if that mystique with the franchise is going to continue, or are they going to have to go on another run for those memories and the history and what that value is to the NFL for it to still be what it was when we were younger?
Yeah, I mean, because, by all other accounts, I mean, we have been to 3 Super Bowls while Jed has been the owner. So, I mean, that's that's not, that's not nothing. That's good over a what, 20-year history. But yeah, when did he take over? Like,
It's like
it hasn't been that long.
2004 or 2005 or something like that.
Okay, yeah, so
Or
it
what
has been.
or it was his mom, and then there was some
Right. So
transition.
so yeah. Yeah, so I'm not clear on exactly when. I know we've been in at Levi for 11 years, and so it's been about 15 years since
I mean, that
he.
he was did he hire Mike Nolan? Because
I don't
Mike
remember.
Nolan would have been 2005, I think.
Yeah, that was because that was Alex was drafted in 2005. But yeah, I don't know if that was Denise um and John York were the owners then. But yeah, it's so that's not nothing. 10, but yeah, it's like I think you're right. I think it is going to take. We have to win a championship, and I mean that is. I am not one who looks at things binary like that. That say, well, Kyle sucks because he hasn't won a championship. I don't think. Okay, so it was 2008 when he took over.
Okay, that makes sense.
God damn, he was only 28 years old at the time. That's crazy. That is crazy.
I
Um,
Yeah, I was,
but yeah.
how old would I have been? I think I was 22. So he's only 6 years older than me? Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean,
No,
he's
no, no.
had
What am I saying? I was 32, so I'm a couple years older than him.
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, and so I kind of like that was one of the things that I'm kind of hard on Jed, but then that's what this documentary reminded me that it wasn't all peaches and cream for
Yeah.
Eddie, because those teams and the reason that I was not I was still young. I wasn't I wasn't even a football fan when, the Joe Thomas and OJ Simpson thing. I vaguely recall OJ Simpson being a 49er, but
I
again,
did
I
not
was
remember all the draft picks that they gave up for OJ to run
mm-mm,
for, like,
yeah,
600 yards or whatever it was.
mm-mm. So, obviously Jed has had some success with Shanahan and Harbaugh, but he's also got the firing of Harbaugh and the Tom Sula and Chip Kelly debacle on his resume as well. But, you know, I guess if you want to say one thing that he has clearly learned is that he learned from Harbaugh is he doesn't seem to be, there doesn't seem to be any heat on Jim's seat. I mean, on Kyle's seat, for better or for worse. He's got extensions at every turn, and it doesn't seem like and I'm not saying that there should be, because I think that he's done a wonderful job, and I have been arguing and will argue that he is the second most successful coach in um 49ers history. I put him right behind Walsh, and people will say, well, Seifert won a championship. Seifert won a championship with Walsh's team, and we saw, if we're talking about coaching acumen, we saw George Seifert in the exact same situation Kyle Shanahan was, taking over a 2-14 team, and it did not go well
I think he's
for
like,
George
he's like
Seifert.
got the record of, like, most games lost in a row or something like that in NFL
Yeah, I mean,
history,
so
something like
it's
that.
just the fact that Lynch and Shanahan took this team from 2 wins, and by all accounts, and we were there. People were saying that was Chip Kelly oversaw the worst roster in the NFL in 2016, and they took that team to a Super Bowl in 2 years.
Mhm.
Kind of like the Vrabel turnaround this year, and they have been, it's crazy, but either we're not in the play before this year, either we are not in the playoffs or we're in the NFC Championship under Kyle.